And we are live with our land navigation chat. Maybe you're lost in the woods and just looking for a little Romy time. I am your host, Romeo. Next in line, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I don't know if I can follow up on that one. Mike Roleski. Got nothing really for this one.
All right, James Strauss, formerly of Missouri Desert, now living in New Mexico. Recently retired, well, about a year ago, retired from the Army, so was a career infantryman. That's my background.
All right, well, I am Jade Helgens. I am the sister of Isaac. I am a medic in the Army National Guard here in Iowa.
And that is our lovely panel for the evening. So, starting right into it, what we are talking about is land navigation, which is very simply finding your way over the land. A lot of people use GPS these days, but anything can happen. GPS can go down, batteries die, GPS can be shut off. So you need to learn how to use the old school map and the old school compass. Now, a lot of you have probably seen these. There we go. The map of Utah. Not a big deal. It's a thin map, that's why I chose it. So road maps are simple, they're basic, they're easy. The more complicated is our topographical maps. They've got a lot of stuff on there. We're going to talk about that. And we'll go over the road maps a little bit and a few other odds and ends. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them up. We will get to you as best as we can. We'll answer whatever we can. So starting out on a map, the most logical place is in the legend. On this road map, it's over here. That tells you, you can't read it, but all these little symbols will show you the type of road, populations for towns, judging by the little dots they put on them, things like that. On topographical maps, they have the same kind of thing down here. Topographical maps also have all these different identifiers for what map you're looking at, where it's located, things like that. So they'll have things such as the sheet name and number on the topographical map. You're going to have a bar scale. That is, I'll use this one so there's less glare. That is right there. That is how you tell distance on this piece of paper. And there are several different ways to use that. The easiest way is basically just take a piece of paper and draw lines in between one section and the other, take it up to that bar graph and figure out your distance that way. There's plenty of other methods. It will tell you, let's see, the declination. Now this one I'm going to hand off. The declination is basically the deviation of north and magnetic north. James, if you want to take over on that one.
Okay, so the issue that we have is that the Earth is round, maps are flat, right? So, and the pole of your compass is not to the North Pole; it's actually to the magnetic north, which is under Greenland. So, and I posted in the chat here an example of what the declination looks like across the U.S. Suffice it to say that near the center of the U.S., going basically from the Dakotas down through, basically in a line with the Mississippi River, is a zero declination for the United States. As you go west, you have a westerly declination up to about 16 degrees in Washington State, and then 16 degrees in Maine. So because our compasses don't point to the North Pole, our compasses point to Greenland, and because the Earth is round and not flat, it creates a declination in your compass reading vice what your map says. So whenever you're navigating, you have to take into account the declination of your compass from what your map is.
I wasn't able to access the picture that you put up, but I grabbed one and I threw it up. It gives the US and it's got squiggly lines going
Yeah,
like that.
that's
So,
exact same one I put up. So
okay.
you'll see on the West Coast, Washington State is 16 degrees. Maine is 16 degrees. Right, basically almost right down the Mississippi, it's 0 degrees. And the further you get away from the center line, which is roughly the Mississippi, the more declination there is. And so you just something to take into account if you're using a compass to navigate, especially if you're trying to find a specific point, that you have to take into account the declination.
And that's part of why mine is so minimal, is because I am virtually on top of the Mississippi where I'm at. So that's helpful for that. But so for example, that is what that looks like on the map. At least my map. This one is, I put a link in the event and in the chat, or down in the description below. It's from my Topo. You can get maps there, different media. This one is printed on, it's like a plasticky kind of paper. You can get them set up with latitude, longitude, the military grid, all different kinds of things like that, different areas, different scales. Just go on there, click buttons, pay them money, and they ship it to you. It's that simple. So the next thing on the maps that we're going to be talking about is the grid reference box. And these numbers all along here help you find your grid reference box. We'll get into that in a little more detail in just a little bit. Now, another thing on here is terrain features. The difference in terrain features are marked differently on the maps they're using. Might as well get it back up here. So, let's see. You can kind of see all through here, all these little lines, those are denoting elevation. And there are different elevations for the map. This one I think is in 20-foot increments.
20 meters.
20 meters. That, yeah, it's meters. So they denote different features like a hill, which if you're looking at a hill, it looks like your knuckle. A valley, which would be an open palm. The area right in there would be like a valley. A ridge would be your knuckles. A saddle, the space in between your knuckles. Draws would be like the spaces in your finger. What have we got? And then there are also things called spurs, which would basically be like the section coming off your knuckles here, where the tendons or whatever are. It's the raised portion. And then a cliff, which would basically be the outside edge. And then there are man-made features like a cut and a fill. Those are used to level out areas for like rail beds and things like that. Now on a map, if you're looking at it and you see a hilltop, that's usually going to be half of whatever the elevation mark is. So if it's 20 meters in this case, that hilltop would be 10 more meters. Okay. So orienting a map, north is up. Very simple. You use your compass, you find north, and you use the grid lines on the map so that you can get everything aligned and working that way. If you don't have your map aligned properly, you're going to go south instead of north. So north is up. And that's always marked on a map somewhere. Or there are actually maps where north is not up. Am I right in that?
I've never seen one.
Okay, I was going to say every map. Yeah, every map I've seen north is always up. So I just go with that.
Go with the river maps.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of the river maps, they're not actually north, because it depends on what section of the river you're actually on.
Okay. True. All right. So the coordinates I was talking about. On the grid, there are usually two letters that start out the party. So in this case, it would be Hotel Echo. And that is just the section of That's the 100,000 meter section, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. So after that, the breakdown is on my other page. After that, you have a series of digits. If it's a 4-digit number, it is 1,000 meters. So if you're looking at Hotel Echo, well, 84.2. Okay, so a little bit bigger there. Hotel Echo 8402. The way you read that is it is right and then up. So you split the number in the middle, and that would be 82. Read it over here to number 2. And that's how you start reading that off. Then if there are more numbers after that, that's how you use this little guy. Trying to juggle a lot. I'm doing best I can.
I have a question real quick, Romy.
Yes.
When we're dealing with the topographical maps, as you're showing, when we're working in HE, is the number system actually inside that section of the map, or
It
I've never
typically
really,
is.
So-
I've never really seen the topographical maps like that.
Like down here in the legend, it's kind of blurry. That shows, well, this one shows Echo Hotel and Echo Golf. Those are your square identifiers for this section of the map. And then, where did I see that? I know I saw on here somewhere earlier. Okay, I thought I saw a section for that, but it might have been on something else. Now,
There's a cut in that map. It's near the top
yeah,
where it
it's,
splits the grid zones.
there's zeros. It's 0, 0. Yep, right there. See this line right here, that double 0, and how you've
Okay.
got the 10 and or the 0, 1 and the 99. You're counting up, so that's 78, 79, 80, so on and so forth to double 0, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So these
Okay.
are your 2 sections. That's how you find that, first of all. So if we were going to go in, like the bottom corner I was using, so that would be the Echo Golf section. That's this bottom half here. And then 82, slide over to 2, and that right there is your square.
But you'd have to reverse those numbers. It's right and up. The numbers that measure left to right are the numbers that are horizontal across the map. The numbers that measure up are the numbers that are vertical on the map.
Gotcha. So then it would be 0, 2,
Yep.
82, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why I needed them here, so I can get corrected. So like this lake right here, if you wanted to find it, make sure this is going the correct direction for one. Where'd my lake go? So you start here.
Make sure you're using the correct one for the proper
Yep.
scale.
Yep. So you'd start here, which would be on the 0, 2 line. You take that over. The middle of that lake is right about there. That's, what was that, 4.5. And then you zip up to the intersection here, which would be about 3.5. Kind of crappy. So here, let me do this quick. I'll write this down so I can explain the coordinate better for that. All right. And we'll make sure I got this right. Okay. So,
Hey, Romy, real quick.
yes.
We're having questions on where to go for watch. Do we have that set up on the chat like we have in the past?
We are currently live. Where are those questions at? On the main page or?
Oh,
Oh, I see them.
on our stuff. It's Tater.
Yeah, I am recopying the link and I'm posting that up in that too.
Okay. He just hit me up. I heard the dings going off. I figured I'd check on him since I was trying to keep my mic muted.
Okay. All right. So that should be squared away then. Okay. Back to this. So we are in Echo Golf. So then I started on 0245. That focused better. 0245 and then 8235. Going first to the right and then going up. Okay, and that would be where the lake is on that map. So now after that, to find your direction, where'd you go? I'm lost.
And that's why we're doing this.
Exactly. All right, so
I don't think we can find it though.
rearrange a little bit. I'm getting too bendy on this. All right. Here we are. So that little lake is our target. And let's say we are something big, something visible. Let's say we're right down here by these tracks. And you wanted to plot a course up to this lake. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line using whatever you have. Make sure you go longer than the line. After you've oriented everything, take your compass, get your bearing, which I'll try and do that another way. With this, now if I'm doing this right from memory, you set this up on your center point the right way. Yep, the right way. And then you would use this to get your degree angle. We'll call it 25. Just because I don't want to draw lines and try and do all that on top of what else I'm doing. So then you take your compass, after you're oriented with your map and everything else, and you start moving at 25 degrees. Now, while you're walking, the terrain features I was talking about on that map, if you come across a point where there's a couple of hills and a depression is basically the opposite of a hilltop. It's just going to be down into the ground. So you're walking and you come across a depression, but you don't see a depression that should be on your path, you've gone the wrong way. Otherwise, you can use that as basically, okay, so along here, you have a large valley. And that would, on this path, end up off to your west, right? That's north. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you don't see this valley or you don't come across this, like if you're supposed to cross this valley and you end up coming across here in this fork, that's how you can use terrain features and the physical features that you're seeing on the ground to find your way. Okay. So basically to recap, on a grid reference, if you get a series of numbers that are, in this case, e.g. 02458235, you basically split the numbers in the middle. If there's 8 numbers, use the first 4 and the second 4. If there's only 4 numbers, use the first 2 and the second 2. I've got to get my notes all put back together. Right quick. Okay. And the amount of numbers basically breaks down the precision that you're at. So if you have 4 numbers, you're looking at a 1,000 meter square. If you have 6 digits, then you have a 100 meter square. 8 digits is down to 10 meters, and 10 is down to 1 meter. So that just deals with the precision of how you're navigating. Determining azimuth. One of you want to take over on that one while I try and resort everything here?
Okay, so your azimuth. So as he was saying, once you find your 2 points, you use your protractor, which is that little plastic thing he was holding up, the square, that thing, to determine your azimuth. But again, that azimuth is going to be an azimuth that's what we call a grid azimuth, or that's the azimuth based on the map. But as we talked about, the map is flat and the map points to what they call true north, or the North Pole. That is not where your compass is going to pull you. So that's when you have to use that declination diagram, that little thing that he showed that there were 3 arrows on his map. Yeah, that declination diagram. And that will tell you what your deviation is.
That's why I went ahead with that one. Mine's pretty simple.
With his 1 degree, unless you were going multiple kilometers, it really wouldn't make any difference. But with the map that he just held up to Nino, which is in Washington State, it's a significant angle. So if you don't take that into account, you're going to be way off, especially if you're moving any distance at all. So once you determine the direction you need to go according to your map by using your protractor, then you measure the distance you need to move, and that's where I'm sorry, I forgot, Jade was bringing in the pace count, which she was talking about earlier. I think maybe potentially before we even went live.
Yep.
But
yes, basically when you're doing a pace count, it's always good before you even do any type of land nav to do a pace count. That way you know basically how many steps you're taking within a certain amount of distance.
yeah, you should generally, your pace count is done every 100 meters. So I know for myself, for example, I take my left foot hits the ground 71 times for every 100 meters. Okay. And that's an average based on different types of terrain. I use 71 as a rule, because if I'm going uphill, it's maybe slightly more. If I'm going downhill, it's maybe slightly less. If the terrain is open and flat, then it's less. If it's rocky and hilly and I got to climb, it's more. So I use 71 for me personally as a general pace count of what I walk. But each person would have to measure that for themselves on a 100-meter measured course, because every person, their gait's a little bit different. He just held up pace count beads. How those work is there's 9 on the bottom, there's 5 on the top. This will allow you to, or 4 on the top, I'm sorry. That will allow you to measure up to 5,000 meters. So for every 100 meters you walk, you pull one of the beads on the bottom. And then once you hit 1,000, then you pull one of the beads on the top. And then you reset the bottom. And now you know you've walked 1,000, so on and so forth, all the way up to 5,000 meters. So that's a good way to keep track, because sometimes me personally, because I'm a dumb grunt, I get confused. So you use an aid like that. You could do anything in a survival situation. You could pick up a stick and, break it into small pieces and keep those pieces in your hand to keep track. That's just an aid. But whatever method you use, it's really important to keep track of how far you need to move, what direction you need to move. And then, of course, as RG brought up, the terrain features along the way. Because if you understand what the ground looks like and the direction that you're moving, you'll understand if you're not on course. Because if I'm looking at my course and I'm supposed to go uphill, then downhill, then I'm supposed to cross the stream, then I'm supposed to go uphill again, and that's where my point that I'm going to is. If I start walking and it's not like that, then I know that I'm not going in the correct direction or whatever, and then I can go back to where I started, and then I can start over and try again. But topographical maps, going back to terrain features a little bit, if you ever look on a topographical map and you see concentric circles is always a hill, right? And again, I'll probably use some different analogies when I'm thinking about this because it's how it appears to me in my head. But when you see concentric circles on a map, it's bigger, or I'm sorry, smaller, that is a hilltop. If you see two sets of concentric circles next to each other with a gap in the middle, that's generally a saddle. And it's very easy to see on a map. If you see a circle on the top, and then an oblong circle, and then a bigger oblong circle, and then a bigger oblong circle, that's going to be a ridge, right? Like he was using his knuckles. So you're going to see that. And where was I? Hill, ridge, valley. In a valley, there's generally almost always, unless you're in Death Valley, going to be water in it. So if you see high ground, meaning that you see the elevation going up on the sides and there's water in it, that's generally going to be a valley. Hill, ridge, saddle, depression. Depressions generally on a topographical map will be a circle, and then it will have tick marks. The tick marks will always point in towards the depression. So depression, a good thing to think about if you want to have kind of like a picture of what a depression looks like. Think of like a quarry where there's basically just cliffs surrounding a giant hole in the ground, like a sinkhole, like a quarry, something like that, just a big hole in the ground. That generally tends to be a depression. They can be man-made or they can be naturally occurring. Like if you were to see a map, probably portions of the Grand Canyon would look like a depression. That would be something to think about, just a hole in the ground. Drawn spur. Spur is generally U-shaped contour lines pointing away from an area of high ground. And then a draw is the reverse of that. So it's U-shaped contour lines pointing towards low ground. Generally, I would assume in about 99.9% of the cases in Iowa, your draws are going to have water in them, or when they appear on the map, they're going to have intermittent water in them, generally dotted blue lines, blue depicting water on a map. So if you see dotted or intermittent blue lines, that's generally a draw. Water cannot go on a spur. So if you ever see water on a map, just understand that that water is in low ground because we have this odd thing on planet Earth that I like to call gravity. And that odd thing on planet Earth that I like to call gravity forces water to always go towards low ground. So if you ever see water, you will always know that that's lower than all of the areas around it.
Let's see if I can get.
That is a draw, 2, 3, 4 draws, 5 draws going into a valley.
Yep.
And now it's in perfect focus. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 draws going into a valley. Is that the map for your place?
Yep.
Yep.
Quick question.
Yes.
It's not really for James. Are we still set up that it's jumping back and forth to whomever's talking? Because if that's the case, the guys probably didn't see it because I had to manually click over myself to see yours, the picture of the actual map. Because I know we
and that's why I tried to talk during it. That way it would pop back up to it. So might have to pause on a review to actually get a good focus on it. But
oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to steal the thunder.
No, perfectly fine.
You're fine. It's just when we get to talking about different things and then Romy has a picture or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the camera doesn't get swapped back and forth to the person.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah,
so the guys that are watching live can't see it.
Isaac put up screenshots for us, but since he's being a slacker, yes, I'm giving him shit because he's not here. I don't really see.
That's why I tried making sure I was still up.
That deck isn't going to build itself there, Romeo. And normally I would be helping him.
I know, and he's bugged me to help him too, but I just can't get down there. So, all right. Let's see, I think we've covered a decent bit. Do you guys have anything you'd like to add, other things that you should consider on topographical maps?
Just a recommendation that in concert with this, that you post some screenshots of on a map on a topographical map what each of the terrain features look like.
In the show links, I found a mapreading.com. They had a section that had different terrain features. It had kind of a drawing of what the feature would look like in real life with the ridge line on top, like the one I'm looking at now. And then it showed what it would look like on the topographical map, what it looks like in real life. So I did throw that up in the chat notes. And then if I can go through and edit, I'm going to edit and throw all these links into the show description itself. So they should be there.
Okay.
Get my screen situated. All right. So.
Well, before we move on, I do have a question.
Yes.
I know we're talking in regards to the topographical mapping, but unfortunately, what happens when the only thing you have is a standard issue map? It doesn't have the topographical maps, because I'm just thinking of the guys, you go up here to the truck stop and just happen to grab a map off the thing trying to get out to BFE.
So what I have here, this is a wider view, but this is hopefully coming into focus. This is your basic road map. This is that Utah map that I brought along. And you can see there are some features shown up. It's not going to be in the greatest of detail, but so for example, get some more urbanized area, something with some detail. So you can see like right in through here, it will show that there is a mountain range here and that this looks like more of a valley area with some smaller hills in it. Let's see if I can get that to focus a little bit. And then it's got these broken lines, which according to our legend are unpaved principal highways. So what you can do in that case, say for example, you wanted to be in Bryce and you're somewhere down in this area. Well, the first terrain feature that you can see, I don't know if you can see it as good, but that little line right across there is a river. It is called Raphael River. So the first thing you do is you come across that river. And then if this is the only kind of map you have, you find another terrain feature that you can jump off of. So follow this river and you'll come to this unpaved road. And then you know exactly where you are on this map. So then you know you want to be up here in Bryce. You can take your compass direction that way and you'll know that you're going to cross across another road here. And then there is a Cedar Mountain overlook. So there's a couple of overlooks here. So those are going to be, logic would dictate those are some kind of cliffs that will be on your side over on this side. And then you can work your way up to the highway here and follow it in, or you can work your way up to these other roads, or you can just follow the roads. Now the roads kind of squiggle around and move around. So if you wanted to take the shortest route, you'd basically have to navigate off of, I should come across a road going off the scale in, we'll rectal number it because I don't want to sit here and measure. So let's say from this point to this point is 400 meters. So I should come to this road right here in 400 meters. And if I don't, then I've screwed up. And then you backtrack and start over. Or you try and figure out where you're at. Like say you come across this road here. Okay, well I know it's going to take me up to this road here where I want to be. So you basically have to use a different set of terrain features. And that goes with this legend right here, because you've got symbols on your normal road map that show airports and all that good stuff there. And then you've got the types of roads here, and it shows you some basic terrain features here. So you're not going to have as great a detail. So you know, in 100 yards, I'm going to come up to a valley, or 100 meters. And you walk 100 meters and, well, shit, there's a hill here instead of a valley. What did I do wrong? So you don't have that kind of detail, but you have, okay, I know this road will be this far away, so I'm going to paste this off. Okay, I found this road. My next landmark is this, and you can kind of navigate using a basic road map that way if you're going cross country.
And the other thing you can use, if you don't want to use the roads, you can handrail the roads. So you can stay within eyesight of the road off to your left or your right. So if it were an escape and evasion type of scenario, but you still wanted to use your basic road map, you could. You just stay far enough either to the left side or the right side of the road that you can still see the road to use it for navigation, but so that you're not exposing yourself on the road. So those are called handrails. And you can use anything as a handrail that you can identify on a map. So whether that be a river, whether that be a road, whether that be railroad tracks, doesn't make any difference. You can use your normal, average, everyday map to use features that you know already exist and you know where they are. So you can use handrails. And the other thing too that's always very important is to create backstops. Whenever you're navigating, doesn't matter whether it's with a road map or whether it's with anything, always set backstops, meaning I know where I've reached a point where I went too far. So I will take, for example, I'm driving from Fort Bragg, North Carolina back to my home in Michigan. I know I'm going down 77, and if I hit Cleveland, I've went too far, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to catch the 80, 90 east to west. So if I hit Cleveland, I've went too far. And so even if you're using a normal, average, everyday road map, you can use the roads as tools to handrail or rivers or railroad tracks or whatever, as long as you create backstops to something that you know, hey, when I reach Mount whatever, I've went too far.
Yeah. And that's also, that's kind of, so I had an example, but it just poof went out of my head that I could have used the map for. But yeah, that way, like in this case, if you're walking towards a road and you come to a river instead, and that road was only a section, like if it was one of those overlooks, then you know you need to turn around because that river was 200, 300, 400 meters away from where you actually wanted to be, and you've gone that far past. That's another way that you can do that. Now, as far as road maps go, this one is a statewide map of Utah. It's, when I go on road trips, I collect maps and dirt. It's just what I do instead of cheap, cheesy souvenirs at road stands. So I also, for my local area, I have a map that is county-wide. So I can see not only the roads in my county, but it'll show me the dirt roads. It'll show me everything except for most level B roads and level C roads. But that gives me a lot greater detail of my immediate area. And I've found these anytime that I'm driving in between here and regular stops across the state, I've found them at gas stations. You just go in and look. They'll have like the free pamphlets and all that crap. There's usually maps there. And it's just a map of like Polk County, for example, or Johnson County or whatever. And it'll have the rural roads, it'll have rural towns, things like that on it, but it'll be a lot greater detail because it'll be the same size as your full state map. But instead of the full state of 99 counties, you drop down to one little county from the state on that size of a piece of paper. So that will help also. It doesn't have all the nifty terrain features on it like a topographical map would, but it's going to give you a lot better detail of the minor features like lakes, rivers, streams, trails, things of that nature. Another thing that I also picked up when I lived in Des Moines, and this is a great idea if you live in an urban area, because Des Moines had a love affair with bike trails. I mean, the whole goddamn town is covered in it. So again, escape and evasion kind of a situation. You could go anywhere within Des Moines, Ankeny, the whole 9 yards, all on bike trails, and you might have to cross a populated area like 4 times for 2 seconds. So that's another option also. And those maps are available all over the place if you just look around for them. Plus, if you come across any like bicycle clubs or something like that, I'm sure you could find them through them. Anything to add?
I would just throw out, if you have an area that is your bug out location, absolutely 100% get a topographical map of that area.
Yeah.
If it's the place where you're going to go to hunker down, because not only is it good for navigation within that area, but it's also good for picking up areas where you could set up observation posts, where you could determine fields of fire by just looking at the terrain around you. If you have a good topographical map of the area where you're going to, specifically if it's a bug out location, a topographical map is invaluable, because you can look at that map and understand by looking at the terrain features where you're going to have the best fields of fire, where you're going to have the best ability to observe people potentially coming in to harass you in your bug out location. So if bugging out is part of your plan and you have a fixed location that you're going to move to, absolutely 100% pay the $5, $10, $15 to get a topographical map of that area.
And I think this one in the plastic paper, the more durable stuff, I want to say it was like $15. So it's a nothing cost. I mean, you can order 3 or 4 of different scales. I could order one. I've got a 911 map that shows my entire county in great detail, but I could have ordered a topographical map from these people for the same kind of money. I'm on the EMS service, so I have access to stuff like that. But if you don't have access to that kind of thing, it's easy to do. The links are in the show description and all over the place. It's, like you said, $5, $10, $15. It's well worth the investment if it's going to be your common area. Another thing I did, I haven't found the site again, but there was a website where I was able to download these maps. It didn't give the best as far as actual scale, but using it for terrain features and stuff like that, it helped a lot. So you can also do it that way. And then there was also in the comments, the bike shop in Muscatine, they give you a bike trail map. So if you're looking for one of those, go to your local bike shop and say, hey, you guys got a map? And they're usually free. I know I've got 3 or 4 different maps of the river that were free, just because I live right near the Mississippi and people are always boating and stuff like that down the river. So river maps like that, Des Moines River and all those types of things. I mean, any rivers that are nearby you, you should be able to pick up maps for them too, because rivers, if you're lost in the woods, following a river in most of this country will lead you to some kind of civilization or people. I know here, if you're walking down the Mississippi and somehow there's no one out, you will eventually come to some kind of a city or a town or something where there are people. If it's a popular river, again, like the Mississippi, you're going to have 40, 50 people. You're going to have barges. You should be able to signal someone if you're lost in the woods. Or if you're just looking to get down to, I don't know, Cincinnati, is that on the river? Either way, I think Tennessee is. Somewhere in Tennessee is. I don't know. Don't ask me geography right now. I'll look at a map later and feel like an idiot. But either way, you can follow a river to most urban areas. I've canoed down the Des Moines River from pretty much start to finish, and there's nothing to it. I mean, it's a straight line. It'll take you to more water, but you can follow that through, and you can come across bridges. You can come across towns. So that's an option too.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
Military maps are generally 1 over 50,000, 1 over 100,000, 1 over 250,000. Those are your normal scales of military maps. Civilian maps do not have those scales. Okay. The one that he has, that he held up, is probably a 1 over 24,000, if I'm guessing.
My personal one?
Yes.
25.
Okay, 1 over 25,000. So it's important that if you're going to use a protractor, that little plastic thing that he held up to navigate, that you get the correct protractor for the correct map scale that you get. And you can get any of the military ones or any of the civilian ones on Amazon. So just make sure if you're going to get a protractor, get one to the scale of the map that you have. And like I said, a lot of the civilian maps, like your Boy Scouting maps and stuff like that, they're in scales that aren't military scales. They're in like 1 over 14,000, 1 over 28,000, which are not.
If I remember right, the civilian maps are 24,000 for topos, usually, correct?
Yep.
And then this, like the box that you're using when you're actually navigating, if I can get it to focus, it'll show you that one's scale there, and there's the 100,000 there. You can see the difference in these scale sizes. That would also be representative of the different sections on the map. So like if I had a large map of my area, this isn't going to be as precise, but I'm going to see a ton of terrain compared to the map that I have, which is this scale here, which is precise enough that I can navigate around and go, oh, hey, there's that lake I'm looking for. So that's also an aspect of scales. Okay, so latitude and longitude. None of us really know a ton about this, but it's very similar to military grid. It's written in umpteen different ways. There's like 20 degrees north by so many minutes wide, blah, 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 blah. Then there's also the decimal version of it. And if you want to learn more about that, trust me, you're going to want to go to Google on that and just start self-studying. But the cliff notes of it is anything that is north of the equator. So the equator is that belt line that goes around the Earth. Okay, goes like this, only much, much larger. So anything north of the equator is going to be represented by an N or a plus symbol. That means it is above. Anything south of the equator would be a really big S or a minus symbol. Now, the tricky one is the east-west. So latitude is the horizontal lines that are parallel to the equator, and longitude is the vertical lines that go from north to south. Now, if you're going east of what is called the prime meridian, and that is in, I'm going to butcher the name, but it's in Greenwich or Greenwich, which
Greenwich.
is London, England. What is it?
Greenwich, England.
Greenwich. Okay. Greenwich. That's also the mean time. I don't know why it's so mean. Maybe it just needs some ice cream or something. But so anything east of that prime meridian, which runs down the middle of that, that's kind of like the equator, only going this way, is going to be represented by an E or a plus, and anything that is running west of that is going to be a W or a minus symbol. So it's measured in degrees, minutes, and seconds instead of the like Hotel Echo and then the number series that we were just talking about. We sit here in Iowa, we sit roughly at the 42nd parallel. Now, those are fairly important when you're trying to decide where you're at with the sun, because the sun moves with the seasons. So Earth sits at about a 23-degree tilt, and this usually points towards the North Star, unless the Earth's spinning around funny. The Earth and the sun location that changes is also based on the equinoxes. So with the equinox in both the spring and in the summer, equinox is due north and due west for the sun's rising and setting. It is directly over what is considered the celestial equator, which is here's the equator and here's the equator in the sky. Now, your solstices, your summer and winter solstice, and the summer solstice, it's as far north as it's going to be, and the south is your winter solstice. This is all for Northern Hemisphere. If you're watching this in Australia or South America, good luck. Your toilet spins backwards. So that's something you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with trying to navigate. Oh, the sun's over here. It's early in the morning, so I'm going to walk this way. No, you're going the wrong way probably. You're probably going northeast if you're in the middle of the summer, or northwest, or depending on where you're going. Anything to add? No? Okay. The moon is relatively similar, but there's a lot of different aspects with the moon. So that deals with the time of year, the time of day, things of that nature. It's very complicated. That's another one I'm going to recommend if you want to know more, go to Google. The general version that I was taught is if you're dealing with a moon that is in the waxing or waning crescents, which is basically it's not a full moon, it's not a new moon. Waxing and waning is the periods in between those. When you have a crescent moon, if you follow those points, when the moon is high, not when it's just coming up or just going down, that will point you south. That's about the easiest way that I have off of that. Now, there are some other methods. James, you want to go ahead and describe the stick method?
Very quick, if there's light out, put a stick or whatever into the ground, sticking straight up, roughly a meter long. And then where you'll have light hitting the stick. And then you mark the line where it first starts. You wait 10 to 15 minutes until the shadow moves, and then you draw another line, and then you draw a line between those two lines, and that will point you towards north. So you take a stick, put it in the ground, mark a line where the shadow of the stick is, wait 10 to 15 minutes, mark the next line where the shadow is, and then draw a line between those two, and that is north.
And there's also a way to do that off of an analog watch if anyone's a dinosaur and wears those, like I do on rare occasion.
It's the exact same method. You just put the stick in the ground, you point your watch, your analog watch, towards the stick, and then turn, point the new hand 10 minutes later towards the stick. The halfway point between the two is your north.
Okay. And then in the links that I put up, one of them is a survival manual PDF from the Army. The page is 18-2. That is all in the show notes over off to the sidebar. So if you guys want to go ahead and download that, and I will add those to the description also after we're done while I'm editing things. So anything else you guys want to add?
Only thing, you know that the exe file that I shared with you guys when we did the class?
Yep.
I don't know if there's a way you can share that with everybody, but just a suggestion. If somebody wants to know more, there's a really good program developed by the Army to teach people the basics of land navigation, marginal data, and all that stuff that we kind of talked about. RG has access to that, and he can share that with whoever, because I know he has access to it because I shared it with him.
I have it downloaded on my computer itself. I'll see if I can figure out a way to make a link about it, and I'll add that to the edit notes if I can.
Yeah. The issue with it is it's an exe file, which a lot of computers will pick that up as a virus. So what I did with you guys is I downloaded it to my Google Drive. I put it on my Google Drive, and then I shared the link so you could download it. So that may be an option, because you can't send it to anybody because it'll just come up as a virus.
I'll see what I can do about that.
We also got the master, Isaac. Just saying.
He's working on his deck. It's kind of dark out yet, but I'm sure he's got a light. All right. So, yeah, if you want to start working on this stuff, I'd kind of like to throw a little something together during the summer for us to all get together and do it. Just the pace count beads, these are real easy to make. Pull the guts out of some paracord, make some loops and some knots with some beads. Nothing to it. If you can mark out 100 meters, I am lucky I live out in the boonies, so I marked out 100 meters and I walked it, and then I went up a hill and down a hill, and I was able to get a bunch of different averages. But your pace count will change if you plan on walking, carrying a 40 or 50 or 150 pound pack. Take shit out of your pack. We'll talk about that during the bug out one. But if you're carrying some kind of pack or some kind of gear, or you're walking over muddy terrain or something like that, that's going to alter your pace count too. I work mine as much as I can. Just try and work on that. Yeah, it's pretty simple to do. And I mean, when I'm walking through town, I had to drop my car off at the shop and I walked to work. I picked up a handful of rocks, and I had so many in this hand, and I had 4 or 5 in this hand, and I kind of estimated how far it was going to be to the shop, and I just walk, and I'd drop a rock every 100 meters. So, yeah, I mean, there's a million different ways to do it. What is this one that you just put up? Perfect. Okay. I'll add this to our notes also, or our show also, once I get back to that tab. Jade just put this one up. This one is a Land Nav manual also. So go ahead and check it out. All right.
Hey, and just in that the survival manual that I posted, there's everything in there from edible plants to poisonous snakes to anything you can think of. If it has to do with survival, it's in that manual. So that's like a Bible, in my opinion. If you don't have access to one, you can order them online. They're pretty pricey, but I mean, buy once, cry once. I mean, it's got everything in there. I have several of them that I mean, it's everything from how to use, how to distill water, how to get water out of the ground. I mean, there's like legitimately everything that you could ever want to know about survival in that book.
Yeah. And there are several manuals where, like you said, buy once, cry once. Even if they're a little on the pricey side, it's worth having a paper copy of. I have a couple that I feel are indispensable. I mean, I don't know if I have this one, but I might. If I don't, I'm going to pick it up. So there are just some things that you should have a solid copy of, and I'm sure we can get to that in another chat as far as having paper copies versus technology, because technology is finite. I mean, anything can make it break. Batteries could die. Like I said, in this case, the GPS signal could be shut off. If something massive happens, like if Russia, China, or aliens end up coming down and invading, the GPS signal can be shut off and only the military can have access to it. And then what are you going to do? We have a couple of comments I want to touch on. One of them is a really good one. In their platoon, they wrote their pace count in their patrol cap. So I'm assuming by that it means their general count, uphill, downhill, stuff like that. Either way, it's a really good idea. And then eBay, which is also where I get a lot of my manuals, is a great place to pick up field manuals and all different kinds of things like that. Usually when I go onto eBay, I'll just type in like, what was that one? It'll have the FM, where was it?
21-76.
Perfect example. It'll be that. Just type in FM 21-76 and it'll come up if it's there. I have too many links open now. I have 47 different tabs up on this thing. There we go. Okay. But yeah, if shit hit the fan situation, if I'm going on a road trip, I always pick up a map. I'll stop in the welcome center because odds are I've been driving for umpteen hours and I could use a break and a pee anyway. So ever since I quit smoking, I drink now constantly in the car, not alcohol, just usually tea or water. So I pee a lot instead. A lot better for you than smoking, I guess. But stop at the welcome center, pick up a map. A lot of them will have other maps also. When I was in the Black Hills area, I was able to pick up the better paper like this one, the plasticky paper. They're topo maps of the Black Hills area. I think they charged me like $5 a piece for them. And I got one for the Wyoming side and one for the South Dakota side. So you can get these things everywhere. Quick Google search. You can come across like ranger stations and things like that would also have them. City welcome centers. Like if you just cross over the border, you'll see that sign, rest stop, welcome center. Tons of maps there you can pick up. If you're going down to Baton Rouge or something, you've never been there. Odds are, if you stop in the welcome center, you can pick up a city-size map of it, and that will give you better detail on the streets. So if you're driving around Baton Rouge and you need to find, I don't know, Plantation Drive, well, I have to go this way, this way, this way, and this way. So you can find them everywhere. They're generally free. Doesn't hurt to have a good map, even if it's just a road map someplace you don't know. Another thing that I do in my car, I have the little screen with the map. Even if I know the area, I still bring that map up most of the time because that will show me if I'm driving down the road and something's happening in front of me. If there's a wreck or something, I can reference that right away. It'll show me, okay, I can cut down this street over to here and up to here and I'm back on path. So that's another quick, easy way to use. It's a GPS map, but let's face it, if you're driving and there's an accident on the interstate and you don't want to sit there for an hour, there you go.
Additionally, a good road atlas, like a U.S. road atlas, Rand and Alley makes a good road atlas. I always have one in my vehicle. I get one every couple of years. It generally has the major highways as well as city maps of all the major cities, whether it be Chicago or you mentioned Baton Rouge, New Orleans, wherever. Generally the Rand McNally road atlases have all the major U.S. roads along with city maps, and those can be good references as well.
And another one that was put up in the comments, contacting the Chamber of Commerce for the places that you're going. So like in my case, if I'm going on another 4 or 5 state long road trip, wouldn't be a bad idea.
You could always come to New Mexico if you did that. Just saying.
I do plan, like I said, I'm hoping to make Arizona this year, and I do plan on stopping in and seeing you guys. They'll mail you the maps, I suppose. So that was the follow-up comment. So you don't even have to go there. Just call them and, hey, can you mail me some stuff? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. And then you get free stuff. Tourism, it's awesome. So, all right. Well, I don't have anything else to add at the moment. Do you guys? All right. I don't see any fresh comments, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I had fun. Appreciate you guys coming in and helping out, as always. Thank you, everyone else, for stopping in and watching us ramble on about whatever topic we're having. Next month, we will be talking about vehicles. This will be not only keeping your shit maintained, but it will also be considerations such as, are you a visible target for criminals, police, different considerations as far as keeping things in your vehicle. So vehicle techniques as far as driving, like I was mentioning, with keeping the GPS up, things like that. So tune in. Next month should be fun. You guys go ahead and give your outros or say goodbye or whatever, and we'll close this up. Don't everybody talk at once. It's confusing. All right. I guess I took up too much airtime. So that's it for us. Y'all have a good month, and we'll see you next time.